Nintendo Labo isn't a video game. It's not even a toy. It's a creative tool, a playground of learning, exploration, and fun. That's the best way that I can describe it. And Nintendo Labo VR Kit takes everything to the next level. There is so much to dive into with Labo VR. Make sure you watch until the end because I also review the VR modes in Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey. If you're on the fence about Labo VR, I hope this review will help you decide whether or not it's right for you. The Nintendo Labo VR Kit comes in a $40 set with the VR goggles and blaster. Then there is the full $80 set, which includes 4 more creations to build and 7 more modes to experience. There are 5 main Toy-Con creations within the Labo VR Kit. Then there is the blaster, camera, elephant, bird, and wind pedal. Each one of these has 2 different modes. The VR goggles are what the other creations connect to. However, it can also be used on its own for visual experiences and minigames. In addition, you can use the VR goggles to play Mario Odyssey and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild in VR. So overall, there's actually a ton of content within the Labo VR Kit. There are 9 main modes, 64 minigames, VR video experiences, Toy-Con Garage Mode, VR Garage Mode, and VR support for 2 of the best games on Nintendo Switch. On top of this, it's a lot of fun creating each one of the Labo creations. Part of what makes Nintendo Labo so magical is you turn a bunch of flat pieces of cardboard into physical controllers that interacts with the on-screen experience. This entire process is really amazing. At first, I just built the goggles and tried a few of the VR Plaza experiences, and I was actually very disappointed. I had never used VR before, so I didn't even have any expectations. But the graphics were worse than I thought they were going to be. The graphics are worse than the 3DS. It's very blurry, it's pixelated, and the actual 3D effect isn't as good as the 3DS. Compared to Labo VR, the 3DS graphics look sharp and crisp. That being said, the actual textures and models in Labo VR are much better than those on the 3DS. So in some ways it looks better, and in some ways it looks worse. If you did not like the 3D on the 3DS, you probably won't like this. However, keep in mind, you can play through the entire VR kit without the VR goggles. That's right, you don't need to actually play in VR, although the experience is much better in VR. But continuing on, after I built the Toy-Con blaster and played the game, everything changed. When you are actually in that world, you become immersed within it and start to forget about the graphics. It's a truly awesome experience. The Toy-Con blaster is the most in-depth creation. The cardboard blaster that you build is so satisfying to use, even by itself. It feels like you're using a Nerf gun, except it comes to life within the game, which makes the experience feel so real. As with all the Toy-Cons, there are 2 modes. The main adventure mode is basically an on-rail shooter. You travel through cities, construction yards, underground subways, and more. Throughout the levels, you attack aliens. There are even boss battles. Each area contains 3 levels, and not only are you trying to beat the level, but also go for a high score. There are many cool mechanics within the game. For example, your bullets bounce off walls. There are energy pods that explode when you hit them, and you can flip down a visor that stops time. Overall, this mode is awesome. It works so well in VR, and it feels like one-to-one movement. Actually using the blaster in real life and having it translate into the game is such a great feeling, and it all works so well together. The only bad part about it is there aren't that many levels within the game, although each level does have a lot of replayability, as you can replay them to beat the high score or to try to get the bronze, silver, and gold medals. This is something I would actually pull out of my closet and play with because it's that fun. There is even a multiplayer mode where you can take turns, which is also a blast. Keep in mind, your arms will get tired. This includes the blaster, but also all of the other Toy-Con. This is part of the reason there is no head strap, because these games are meant to be played in short bursts. Most of the games within the Labo VR kit wouldn't even work with a head strap. The only thing a head strap would make sense for is with Breath of the Wild, but we'll get into that later on. Next up, we have the Toy-Con bird. I actually thought that this was going to be a lot of fun, but it takes a bit of getting used to. My first impressions were not great. You tilt and move, but you can also look around freely. This causes the view to drift apart from the direction the bird is facing. So every time I would play, I start having to turn my body more and more to the right to compensate for the drifting. It's pretty annoying because it breaks the immersion at times, but you do get used to it. For this one, I'd recommend playing in a chair that can spin, as this mitigates the annoyance. Once you get used to everything, there is a lot of fun to be had. The first mode is basically a collectathon. Your goal is to collect 25 birds. In order to do this, you have to find each egg. Once you find the egg, it hatches. Then you must feed the chick inside the required food. Each chick needs different foods and different amounts. So you have to explore the island collecting all these different types of food. When you feed the chick the required amount of food, it turns into a bird, and then it starts to fly around with you. Once you collect 24 birds, you can hatch the giant golden egg on top of the mountain and start feeding it. The birds you collect will also appear in the dash mode. This is like a pilot wing style mode where you have to fly through the different hoops. It's a lot of fun as well. In addition, you can also use the wind pedal in both of these modes. You can also use another creation that you build later on. Overall, the bird is great, but it does take some getting used to. Flapping your wings with a Toy-Con creation translates well into the game, and as your arms start getting tired, you start to actually feel like a bird flapping its wings non-stop. Now we come to the Toy-Con wind pedal. With this one, you play as a frog, jumping as high as you can, avoiding obstacles. I thought this would be stupid, but it's actually really cool. It feels so realistic. The wind pedal actually pushes wind towards you in real life, as it also does in the game when you jump. There are several different difficulties that you unlock as you keep playing. This frog hop game is super satisfying and a great VR experience. The wind pedal is also required to play the bird dash mode, and it makes the entire experience more exhilarating. Now we have the Toy-Con camera. The camera itself feels great to use. It makes noise as you zoom in with the lens. Then, when you use the camera in the two different modes, it just works seamlessly. These two modes include the house and the ocean areas. In the ocean, you take pictures of the sea life, and in the house, you take pictures of your virtual pet. In each area, there are 44 pictures or missions you're trying to get. For the ocean, you have to find 44 different fish. And in the house, you have to take pictures of 44 different things that your pet does. So there is definitely a lot to do in these two modes. However, it does not have any replay value, because all you're doing is taking pictures. So once you take all the pictures, you're basically done. But one thing a lot of people don't think about that is part of the replay value is showing others. It sounds corny, but the way you're using the cardboard to interact with the in-game experience is truly magical. So when playing the VR kit, I would oftentimes show my girlfriend the different VR experiences, and she would think they are so cool. Then she would want to show her mom. Passing around the VR goggles and sharing that experience is part of the fun and part of the replay value. Lastly is the Toy-Con elephant. I wasn't sure what to expect with this one, but it works very well. There are two main attractions, the first being Marble Run puzzles. You can play through these physics puzzles, or you can create your very own. What makes this entire thing so good is the trunk of the Labo elephant acts as your arm. You can essentially reach out and grab each of the elements within the puzzle. Each puzzle has an end goal. This goal ranges from getting the ball to the end hoop, or making the ball go through a ring several times. The more you play these levels, the more pieces you unlock in the free build mode. This progression system is really good because it keeps you wanting to play through the levels, which also helps teach you the different mechanics. Then later on, you can use all of this to make your own Marble Run puzzles. The second mode is the Paint Studio. You can create many different paintings, and there are a vast array of tools for you to use. It isn't very precise, but nevertheless, it's a lot of fun to mess around with. Additionally, there is a Pictionary style mode for 2 players I can see being lots of fun. My only problem with the Toy-Con elephant is it can be limiting at times in terms of freedom of movement. I was really surprised by how accurate the arm is. It feels like one-to-one movement, but because the arm can only stretch out so far, it can be limiting if you're not careful. Also, not being able to move around your creation or move up and down can also feel limiting as well. These limitations break the immersion at times. However, once you get used to how everything feels, you stay immersed and it becomes a much better experience. But this is not everything Labo VR has to offer. First of all, part of the whole experience is building the creations in the first place. This is something most people overlook. Building the creations is like building a Lego set, except once you finish the project, it's not just there for display, but you can actually use it to directly interact with many different VR experiences. There are also 33 virtual reality videos to watch as well. Not only this, but there are 64 additional minigames that work with the different cardboard creations. Now yes, many of these are bite-sized games, but still it's more content and fun experiences. But what makes these minigames awesome is for every single one, you can explore the programming behind it. You can alter and change it to make it completely different. This is where Labo VR Garage comes in. Labo VR Garage is really amazing. You can create VR games yourself. This actually adds a ton of replay value. There are so many possibilities on what can be created here. The only downside to the VR Garage is you can't share the games you make. On top of the VR Garage is the standard Toy-Con Garage. The Toy-Con Garage lets you build your own cardboard creations and games. There is a lot you can do with this mode as well. For example, with the Toy-Con Garage, I created a 2-player pinball machine. It uses the Switch screen as a scoreboard that automatically keeps track of the score, and it adds a way to change the modes. There are also so many more amazing creations that others have made. Toy-Con Garage teaches kids the fundamentals behind coding and programming games. It teaches it in such a simple and effective way. Now there are some limitations, but with some problem solving, you can build amazing creations. And then those creations can interact directly with the object you make yourself. There is so much that can be done here, and it's just so awesome. You can even modify all the Toy-Con Labo creations that come in the kit. You can modify the code behind them to make them do different things. Toy-Con Garage is an extremely underrated feature with all the Labo kits that nobody ever talks about. And now with the addition of the VR Garage, the Nintendo Labo VR kit is an amazing creative tool. Now, what a lot of you probably have been waiting for. Labo VR now also works with Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild, but is it actually good? I think it is good. It's not great, but it's not bad. You can play the entire game of Breath of the Wild in VR. I've heard people complaining about motion sickness, and you will feel a little bit of that if you're looking around a bunch. So when I play, I limit the movement of my head, except for stuff like using the bow with motion controls. I think it actually feels and looks really cool when you're using the motion controls with the bow. So yeah, I had no eye strain or motion sickness issues. The only issue I had was it is a bit hard to read the text on the edge of the screen, and this would be a lot better with a head strap. I genuinely don't think any other part of the VR kit needs a strap, but with Breath of the Wild, it would make it so much more enjoyable. I know this because I tried laying down in bed using my knee to press the goggles to my head. Then I held the Joy-Cons in each hand naturally. This felt so much better, and honestly, it's not that hard to add a strap at all. There are many DIY examples and tutorials online. In terms of graphics, yes, of course it's a bit blurry compared to normal. But the textures and lighting and all of that are still great, and the frame rate is also very steady. If you want to know how it looks, it's worse than the 3DS graphics, except with better textures and models. So as previously mentioned, in some ways it looks better than the 3DS, in some ways it looks worse. But just like with Labo VR, you get immersed into that world, and you don't notice it that much. Yes, this one should have been in first person, but it still works well, and it's a cool thing to experience. That being said, this should not be the sole reason anybody buys Labo VR. It's simply a bonus you get. It's a VR mode for 2 games. I don't know what people were expecting. Of course it's not going to be super amazing and crisp and clear. It's a bit blurry, a bit clunky at first, but when you get used to it, it's a fun experience. Now for Super Mario Odyssey VR, it's a lot different. Odyssey is not playable in VR. Only a few levels made for it are VR compatible. Visually, it honestly looks better than Breath of the Wild, but the fixed position is horrible, especially when they make you go far into the distance. The further away you go from the screen, the harder it is to see Mario. At its worst, you become like 3 pixels tall, and it's basically impossible to see what's going on. You can't even tell the depth because you're so tiny. Odyssey should have the entire game playable in VR like Breath of the Wild. I have no idea why they did not do this, because the 2 games are very similar in terms of perspective. They also should have made it in first person mode. It is a cool experience because to complete everything, you have to look all around you. But because of this, you basically need a spinning chair for it. This mode is weird and very short. Except I don't even know how to unlock the other 2 levels. It just has question marks next to levels 3 and 4, even though I've already beaten the first 2 levels. I'm sure somebody in the comments will tell me how to unlock them, but there's no indication at all, and that's pretty annoying because I wanted to play these levels. Overall, these VR modes in Zelda and Mario are great additions, but should not be the main reason you buy Labo. It's a cool experience, but the main draw of Labo is the kit itself. Yes, Zelda and Mario would have been better in first person mode with a head strap, but Nintendo didn't do it that way, and that's fine. In conclusion, the Nintendo Switch doesn't have proper hardware for proper VR. Because of this, Nintendo did VR in their own unique way, and they did a fantastic job. Nintendo Labo is not for everyone. It's made specifically for kids in mind. There's a reason that Nintendo has never mentioned Labo in a direct. There is a reason they've always completely separated it from everything else. Nintendo Labo VR is its own unique entity. It's not trying to be a VR headset, it's a VR experience. Labo is all about building, experiencing, and discovering. So merging virtual reality with Nintendo Labo is an awesome combination. It's not a toy, it's a creative tool, a playground of learning, exploration, and fun. But that's enough from me. I want to hear from you. What do you think about Labo VR? Are you going to give it a shot? Let me know your take in the comments down below. Thanks again for watching.